This is where 9 to 5 ends and real talk begins. The After 5 Diaries. The After 5 Diaries.
Hey everyone, welcome to the After 5 Diaries. How are you guys? How's your weekend going? Mine is perfect. Welcome to the After 5 Diaries, a podcast where we talk about 9 to 5, corporate life, and everything in between. Today we're diving into a topic that has a mix of politics, ambition, burnout, power, all in one. And I'm joined today by a powerful person. A person that it took me a while before I got him to come here, and I'm so grateful he's here. He's an experienced, you know what, I want to read his profile. I don't want to mix things up, okay? I'm joined by Mr. Alexander Goma. Mr. Alexander Goma is an experienced business leader with over 30 years experience building people, customers, and brands across multiple organizations, including Procter & Gamble, Tish American Tobacco, Guinness, PZ Cousins, and Grand Cereal Limited. Thank you guys. Help me welcome Mr. Alexander Goma to the show. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of why we're here. Let's start from the beginning. How did you land your first corporate role?
My first corporate role was working in quality control in a bottling company in Jos.
Okay.
I basically worked there, asked if they had an opportunity, and I was told, oh, they're trying to recruit somebody for quality control, but I had to compete. And I said, look, I wasn't afraid to compete. So wrote the test with a number of other people, went through interviews, and then there were just two of us that were recruited. And that's how my first job came about.
Okay. So how did you approach this corporate role? How did you approach it?
I think it was basically, you're out of school, you're looking for a job, you wanted to survive. I had responsibilities back home. I was the first out of 9 kids. My dad was late, so it was something I wanted to do. I had the opportunity of having interned in a brewery, so I had an experience of what it takes to work in a 9 to 5. And I also did my NYC at Eastern Breweries in our mama. So I also had a full-time experience of learning what it is to actually work 9 to 5. So I wasn't exactly green, right? If you look at it from that perspective.
Okay. So in approaching your first corporate job, I'm sure that there are a lot of things you put into work when you landed your first role. So let's talk about you going into the job proper. There are so many things that I'm sure you put in place, you put into consideration, not just hard work. Maybe you're also after being seen as well in your corporate role. Can we talk about the idea of being seen and visible while you're working?
Funny enough, for me at the beginning, and I think through most of my career, it's never been really a focus on being seen.
Okay.
So the focus for me was, first of all, to learn and to apply. Like I said, because I had the advantage of having interned somewhere where they had the right foundations, they had some of the tools, so I learned, and they had a good library where you could read around about the things you were doing. So when I came to work, I had a bit of confidence that I knew what was required for the role.
Okay.
And so I could apply. But I focused more on applying myself and also learning things beyond my role. I think that's the help I got, because as I tried to do things outside of what my core role was, it gave me a bit of visibility.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And so I remember at a point when the factory was struggling to produce because we had some parts of the plant not working, and I had an idea that we could actually run without that, but doing certain slight changes. My boss didn't accept it or didn't believe it was possible, but I had a chance to speak to his boss and tell the boss that I thought this was feasible. But my boss kept shooting it down, and one time he was away for like 3 or 4 days leave. And so I went to his boss and I said, look, why don't we give this a trial? And we did, and it worked. And my boss came back abruptly from his leave and went straight into the lab to check the samples to see whether what we produced was right and consistent. And it was. And until I left, that's what happened. So I think, yes, it's good to be seen, but I think the major focus should be work on yourself. Look at how you can create value, because that's the foundation. Then when you're seen, they're seeing something valuable. It's not to see glitter on the outside, but then there's nothing solid that is backing that glitter.
Of course, you just really like corroborated what I just said. It's based on the value you put in yourself. That's what made you visible, right? Of course. So let's go down into climbing the corporate ladder itself. So why do you think people want to climb this ladder in the corporate organization?
I think it's because if you look at our society or wherever we are today, what's the only legitimate way of increasing your income? Is for you to be promoted. If you grow, you get promoted, you get more money out of that, which is why a lot of people want to. What I've found out over time is that not everybody has the capacity to go right to the top, because there are certain challenges or certain trade-offs that you would have to make. And sometimes I tell people that I'm sure if people had other ways of getting income, there are certain roles they will not do. Because some people just want to have time with their family, have a good time, do some things. But as you rise, you find out that leadership is responsibility. And sometimes some of those responsibilities can be hard, but I think it's the fact that for a number of people it's the only way you can get better income. For some is the fact that you can get more responsibilities, you can actualize yourself, and then it's also a sign of success, right? The way the society sees success, the more advanced you are, the more successful you're seen as. That's the way I would summarize it.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. So in the process of climbing this ladder, I know a lot of things come in, like politics. Let's talk politics, right? So because no one says it, it's always there. How much of career growth is alluded or attributed to being you meriting it, or maybe you playing politics in this ladder thing?
So I think it depends on the culture and the values of the organization. So there will always be politics, because we're humans, right? And it is easier for you to work with people that you tend to think alike in a particular manner or not. So what I always tell people is you should play the politics of value. What are the values of your organization? What does the organization hold today? Are you a poster boy for that? So what you require to succeed, there's a lot of hard work of foundation at the beginning, but as you grow higher, that hard work is what builds you what I'll call emotional bank balance with the bosses at the top. Okay. Because once the perception is this person works hard and this person is doing well, it doesn't mean you won't make mistakes or you won't have errors. But because there's a positive inclination towards you, even when you make mistakes, it's easier for your sins to be forgiven versus somebody who is not liked or admired, or who is not seen as consistent with the value. So, so long as you are aligned to the culture and values of the organization, you're more likely to grow. The more you also play the politics of value, in the sense that you add value to your boss's job, you make his life easier, you make it easier for other people, because bosses want someone they know they can deliver, and someone who is also not struggling for the limelight with them. So get your job done, help them do their job well, and also you can represent what the good of the company looks like. They will support you. There's the other part of politics, which is the bootlicking and trying to, and sometimes you might be useful, because sometimes there might be dirty jobs to be done. The problem is that you have a short shelf life, because once you're useless, you'll be cast aside. So I always tell people, play the politics of value. Are you valuable to the organization? Do you represent what the organization stands for? Do you help support the ambitions and the aims of your bosses? Because they will then propel you.
Okay. I want us to dwell in that politics part a little bit more. So you talked about politics of value. And then there's the other side of politics as well. So there are some organizations or some people who try to climb this ladder the right way based on merits, and they probably do not get it. So the ladder now favors the people who play this politics and not playing it in the right way and not giving value. Can we dwell on that a little bit?
So there has to be an understanding about what merit and value is.
Okay.
There's technical competence and mastery, and there's leadership competence and mastery. And sometimes some of those leadership elements are the things that are touted or seen as politics. If I'm a finance person, am I good at reading the numbers? Am I good at analyzing and doing that? Fantastic, I am functionally competent. Can I sell my proposal to the right people? That's a different skill set. So sometimes a lot of people dwell on the functional. The higher you go, you're not the one going to execute the jobs. You're the one going to motivate or lead people to execute those jobs. So do you have the right kind of leadership? Do you have the right kind of communication skills? Do you have the ability to be able to work with different kinds of people? Can you adapt in different situations? These are the things that sometimes people call politics, and we call it in a bad way, which is not necessarily supposed to be bad, because we've taken the description of what the quality of the politicians we see outside to make politics to be seen as something bad. No. So I think that the functional attributes, there are some of the personal or leadership attributes that will come because of your abilities to associate with different people.
Okay.
The higher you go, the more that is required, because you will now need to motivate, to guide, to drive people to get some things pushed beyond what you do. And so we have to balance or moderate how we describe that word politics.
Okay. I like what you said about associating yourself with the right people. So does it mean that in this journey of climbing this ladder, this corporate ladder, you have to dwell and be very strategic with association? Do you think that should be a thing?
I think you have to be conscious of it. You have to be conscious that, one, how does the organization see you? It's like, I think it's one of the scriptures that says you cannot light a lamp and hide it under a bushel. So if you're fantastic and nobody knows, then how do you get the opportunities? Now, there are structures, right, within organizations that ideally should make that visible. Okay. Through the way you measure performance, through the way you get visibility to people who are working underneath. But it's ideal, and we know that life is never ideal. So sometimes, even though you have the processes or the structures, it doesn't work. So the question is then, how do you get seen, right? First thing is you get seen if you offer value to the people you work with, you offer value to your bosses, to your colleagues, to your subordinates, because sometimes they are the ones that will put you in the limelight. So some of the roles I have done have not necessarily happened because I either pushed for them. It's because somebody has said, if you are looking for someone like this, then I know somebody who can do that job. Okay. So the question is, how did I meet that person who knew? And sometimes it might be because I offered a service for free. Sometimes it could be because they were having a problem which was not necessarily my function, but I came to offer them a solution. All right? And sometimes it could be that a boss was also deliberate, who says, I see this person, because I've seen other organizations where senior leaders know that for them to get you to a certain level, they need to show other people that you're good enough. So they start to create the platforms for you to show you're good enough. So they could invite you to do a presentation to a set of senior leaders, okay? In doing that, those senior leaders know, okay, I remember this young chap the last time I came to Nigeria, because he was one of those brought to come and speak. So there are different ways you get that, but you've got to be conscious that you're like a brand. Mm-hmm. It is what you do for people and how you make them feel. You need both for you to get to the height. What you do for people is tangible, but if you don't make people feel very good about you in the way you serve them, in the way you act on the things that you're expected to do, then you're going to struggle. And I think it's finding that balance that a lot of people don't have. If I focus so much on the way people feel and I don't have substance, it's just a matter of time you're found out. If I focus so much on this, you're hardworking, but there are a lot of other hardworking people. Mm-hmm. So how do you find a balance between both? I think that's where most people face the challenge.
All right, you guys, I've been chatting with Mr. Alexander Goma, and we've been talking about climbing the corporate ladder. We'll take a short break right now. When we come back, we'll continue the chat. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. I'll be right back.
The After Five Diaries. The After Five Diaries.
You guys, welcome back to the After Five Diaries pod. My name is iamphuna, and I'm chatting with Mr. Alexander Goma, and we're talking about climbing the corporate ladder. Sister, welcome back to the show. So, in the course of you climbing this ladder, the corporate ladder, in the course of your career, was there a turning point for you? I mean, when you were climbing, was there a breaking point, like, oh, you really worked hard and you didn't get what you deserved? Just run us through it.
I would say I've had different opportunities, and I think at different stages there have been different things that have happened. Like I said, I started with a bottling company in quality control, and then I left to go and join Leventis Group as a trainee sales manager. All right, and then I became a branch manager, and at some point I left to join P&G to go and start as a sales rep, which felt like a demotion. Because when I was being interviewed, and they said, look, P&G only hires at entry level. So I had to make a decision whether I was willing to accept it or not, but I did. And it gave me the kind of foundation I needed, because it rooted me in some of the commercial understanding that I had today. But one of the big breaking points happened when I think we had a vice president for Europe, Middle East and Africa coming to Nigeria. At that point, they were looking at a business they were thinking either of buying or looking at, and it happened to be in the territory where I was. So he came with the MD, I picked them up from the airport, and in between getting that and getting back to the hotel, you have conversations. So it kind of seemed a bit coincidental after that day. The next week I got a call from my boss at the head office that, hey Alex, do you have a passport? Yes, okay, send the first 4 pages. And the next thing I saw a letter inviting me to the European Sales College 1 in Lisbon. And I think that was a turning point, because it brought me into the limelight of this is what you required. And then I grew within P&G, and then I left to join BAT. And BAT as well, I think there was a point where the global MD and his executive team came to Nigeria, and the CEO in Nigeria felt that the functional heads were not going to present, and it took some of us at the lower level. At that time, I was a regional manager, to present on behalf of the function. So again, it was later I found out it was a deliberate attempt to put you in the forefront, that people know this is who you are, or somebody like this exists. And there were different times when we had conferences, he would just take me and say, oh, Alex, I want you to meet somebody. You just introduce, oh, this is Alex, this is it, this, that. And subsequently, you find out that, okay, roles came my way. So I think it was a mixture of being deliberate, making sure that I was doing the work, and then he also making sure that, okay, he provided the exposure. But there's one big lesson he sent to me when I was being sent on one assignment, something he actually begged. He said, look, Alex, this might sound a bit, I don't want you to take it personal, but he said, look, you're going on this assignment, please, whatever you do, don't steal money.
Oh my God.
And he said, I've been in Africa for long. I've seen a lot of bright, young Africans with a lot of talent, but the first time they get exposed into a small position of authority, they abuse it. So I'm begging you, please, whatever you do, don't steal money. That was how emphatic it was. But I think for me, those were the points where I think on the positive side, I had people pushing that for me. I had never been looking at or putting a target for timelines to say get to these roles, because I think all the timelines I had in my development plans, the roles actually came ahead of time. I'd always remained focused that work on yourself. So I've never been, don't look at your neighbor. I believe we have different tracks, right? I'm not in competition with my neighbor or my colleague. I need to know myself. I need to know what I have to offer, and I need to work on myself. Because if you focus on your neighbor or the next person, you stop being you. And you're trying to compete with somebody who is trying to be the best version of himself. And you might never you might never find out that actually what stands you out is very different with what stands somebody else. And there will always be opportunities for people who have different kinds of attributes or different roles. If you recognize that, I think it makes it easier for you to focus on yourself. So for me, that's what I would say has kind of helped. I don't know if that answers.
Of course it does, it does. So I want us to like broaden our conversation a little bit in terms of other people and maybe not your personal experience right now. So in the course of climbing the ladder for 9-to-5ers or for people in corporate life, I know there are costs, and there are personal costs and emotional costs to climbing this ladder for people generally. Can we talk about it a little bit? That, you know, most of these costs, personal, emotional costs, that people don't really talk about. They don't voice out to other people. But deep down, this is the price they have to pay. This is what they go through in terms of climbing this ladder. Can we talk about some of them a little bit?
Yeah, there are quite a lot. One, family, right? If you are going to grow, finding a balance between family and personal life. And this is why I always tell people, especially young people who are single, I said, whether it's in business, you're running your business, or growing in corporate life, one of the biggest decisions will be your choice of spouse. Because at some point, something will have to give. And so who carries or holds that balance? There's a period in my career where I didn't spend more than 18 months in one location.
Wow.
For over about 7 or 8 years. So I was being moved from here, 1.5 years here, 1.5 years here, 1.5 years. So how do you manage that? Okay. I also had roles where I was based on the field, and sometimes you're traveling literally every week. If I was a pilot, I probably would have qualified to be more than a super captain with the number of hours of flying I used to do at that point. So somebody needed to carry that, somebody needed to be in the gap. So one, that will always be an issue. You will always be under pressure of doing well, you know, because sometimes you've done well, or should I do well? And you can be under pressure to feel I can't fail. No, sometimes you will make mistakes, sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you will have this imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I don't think I am good enough, because you're never ever 100% ready for the next role that you have. So some of these things can be challenges for you to do. Your personal life or leisure, finding the right balance, it might be something that will have to give. Sometimes you may have to participate in certain activities that might not be something that is there to you. So there are lots of people who see me sometimes and think I'm very, very extroverted because you're outside. It's something I've had to learn, right? Because there are conversations that happen after 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes if you're not there, it's not as if they're set out there deliberately for the decisions to happen. But you know, sometimes after a glass of wine or spirits or beer or something, people talk a bit more freely. And sometimes the real nature of people show up. And sometimes the people who are assessing you too also use those areas to say, okay, we think this person could be somebody, you know, who we would like to have around us. So there are things that will give. And there are times when you have to be at an event where you don't want to. You've got to be there. And then, of course, like I tell people, you will probably never ever have to be the one to choose your boss.
Right.
So it means that you have to adapt. So the organization must have certain values that are written on websites, on walls, but the behaviors might be contrary, and you're dealing with that. You could have a toxic boss and everybody else is fine, and nobody else knows that he's toxic because the toxicity doesn't show out in loud this thing, and you have to deal with that. So some people are able to deal with that, some people stomach it, they don't deal with it, and the effect shows years later because they've struggled to manage how to handle that. So there's certain prices you have to pay, and it's not always as visible. So there are times when I've delegated responsibility to other people who are supporting, and when I do that, I do it completely. I refuse to solve the problems they're facing. They will copy you for you to intervene, I will refuse. And one of them came to me after the first time I did it. I said, Oga, I didn't know that this is how hard leadership is. And I said, yes, and it's the reason why I refused to answer. So even though I'm back, this decision you're going to take, yes, I will accept responsibility for whatever happens, but you will take this decision. So you understand the pains that have to come with it. Sometimes friendships, okay? At work, you build relationships. I remember one instance where going to merge two organizations, and I was leading the merger. And I had one of the two directors who have to go. And that particular period, my car had a problem, and I was going home with one of the directors. Now, what do you think is the challenge? And I'm talking 20 years of friendship.
Yeah.
So, are you going to act on the basis of friendship,
Emotion,
or are you going to
sentiments?
act on what is right? And whichever way you act, you will never be forgiven.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And you have to live with that. So those are some of the prices that people pay.
So who did you eventually pick?
No, I found a mid ground that made sense for the business, even though eventually one person, because I said, okay, one person was expatriate. I felt that we needed that person in the short term to get a lot of things done. The other person, we created a sub role, but the plan was that this person will fit into that role. I will eventually this person would move transit, because I would always need to have a local there. I think it makes sense for the business. So that was the kind of middle ground. But I think the person still left. He found something else, or maybe he felt it wasn't right for him. So it's. But that's life.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure a lot of people are listening and nodding and saying. So, but let's speak a little bit more on this cost that people have to pay, especially the emotional ones. You talked about imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So let's really dwell on that a little bit. How do we manage these costs that people have to pay, these prices that they have to pay in the cost of climbing the corporate ladder?
I think one of the things is humility helps you to handle that, because humility is, again, not the way we translate it, because I think people think that when they say somebody is humble, you're putting yourself to be stepped upon. No, it's understanding that everybody has something to offer and that you don't know everything. And if we think about it, all the knowledge in the world, we still don't have up to 1% of that. Because every day, once upon a time, this is the best we could have. Once upon a time, there are people today who don't know when you bring a cassette recorder. They haven't seen that. They have no clue. That was your way of getting music. Then you had disc, and now it is digital, and now it is this. Because the more we uncover knowledge, the more we can do new things. So if you go with the mindset that I don't know anything, and every day is a new learning experience, and it's okay for me not to know, right? I think you can deal with that, right? So it's one way that helps you stop feeling that I must be the expert. So I think we should focus on learning principles. If you understand principles and you say, okay, how do I allow these principles to operate? It helps you. The second thing is to ask yourself, okay, what could go wrong if I fail? And you therefore make plans to mitigate against that. Sometimes it's the fear that I could lose my income, so how do you manage that? Sometimes it's the fear that, people might think that you've been so fantastic all these years, and no, you will make mistakes. There are some decisions that we've taken sometimes that are wrong, and sometimes it's also things work in your favor, all right? The guys who launched GSM in Nigeria, we had only 400,000 lines, and all of a sudden you brought something pent-up demand. Oh, you're a newly hired sales rep. Oh, you sold 20 million lines. It's not because you're a super salesman. There was pent-up 20 million people looking for lines, right? So it's good to be humble sometimes when we look at the things that we have achieved. It will help you. So recognize that it's there. Recognize that it tells you that, okay, yes, I don't feel that I know something. So it's okay. Just go back again and go back to previous roles that you did. When I started this, I also didn't know anything, but then how did I manage? So build from that. And if you can also find people who can speak with, who can guide you, who can advise you, this is where the role of a mentor, a coach, or someone comes in to say, okay, they can give you what I call a bit of solar energy for you to power on, and then you start to see. Get small wins, get established. You know, like we say in an African proverb, you know, when a chicken gets into a new land, you put one leg on the ground first before you put the other leg. That's the way you approach it.
Okay, interesting. So you, in the course of the last question you just answered, you talked about switching roles. I know people try to switch roles in industries just to climb this ladder. Do you think that switching roles or changing your industry or place of work resets this climb that we speak of?
It actually helps, because I think one way to look at it is to say, walk from the end backwards. Let's assume your aspiration, you want to be a CEO. So what should a CEO be good at, right? How do we drive growth? How do we build people? How do we build structures within the organization that are sustainable? How do we drive performance? How do we interface with all our stakeholders to make sure that we're good at? Now, you can get knowledge through certifications, but people don't pay for your knowledge. People pay for what you do. So the only way to get skill is to do certain roles. So there are certain roles that will give you certain skills. So if you want commercial skills, for example, roles in sales, roles in marketing will give you that. And the foundation for most businesses, especially commercially oriented businesses, okay, that's fantastic. But then, in order to sell the products or the services that we do, we need to make them or set up the structure to do that. So you might need some operations knowledge. So what can do that? There might be certain roles that give you access to operations and you understand what they're doing, because in future, you're going to require that knowledge, because you need to know where the dead bodies are buried if you're going to make decisions. So I think it's absolutely critical. You become a better person if you do roles that give you insights into other parts of the business. They could be full-time roles, they could be part-time project roles that give you exposure, or they could be you working in a project team that gives you the collaboration with that. I think sometimes people don't accept roles because it might not be sexy.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might seem like you're moving backwards. So the straight line, sometimes can be fast, but can be very dangerous. So sometimes what the trajectory looks like is like this, 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 right? So have somewhere where you're strong. This is my home ground. I have strong competences, and then I understand enough of other aspects to be able to ask the right questions and point people in the right directions where at the top. So I think it's absolutely critical to do other roles. I think it helps you open your minds, it helps you understand where they're coming from, it helps you understand the kind of problems they're dealing with. Because remember, when you get upstairs, your problem is to remove all the obstacles for the people working underneath to do their job better. They're the ones doing the work. As CEO, you don't sell. As CEO, you don't do a marketing campaign. As CEO, you don't produce. Where are the bottlenecks? How do I remove them from them? How do I make it easier for them to do the things they're supposed to do? That's what your role is supposed to be. So I think it's absolutely essential, if you want to get a broad-based knowledge to be more effective, to have those kind of switching of roles. Some might not be sexy, some might not be attractive. Sometimes it might feel like it is backwards or a sideways movement, but it adds up to that final person that you are.
Okay. So let's get controversial a little bit. Should everyone climb this ladder? Should everyone?
No, I don't think everyone is built to do that, and you can probably see that when you see the way some people struggle with certain decisions. I've seen people promoted into a director role, and after 1 year they say, this is not for me. Now, because they like the job, they like the function, they like what they're doing, right? And the moment you move them up, it's a different challenge, and they're not built for that, or they're not ready for that, or they're not ready for the sacrifice. So I think it's important to know who you are. I think I always, when I talk to young people, I said, and I use one of the quotes from Mark Twain. There are 2 days that are the most important in anybody's life: the day you're born and the day you find out why. Because the day you find out why, you start living, and you start building yourself in that direction. I think a lot of people want to be comfortable, and there are certain roles that will make them comfortable. Some people can be in an organization for life. Some people can stay in one organization for too long because they're very active, agile. Once things become boring, they need to do something else. Sometimes you need a role to set you up on your path to going to start your own. Okay, you get exposed. Businesses create the foundations. If you look at most entrepreneurs, right, worldwide, who have built businesses, a lot of them are not people who started out of school. They've worked somewhere, so they've gotten some knowledge about how to run things, what works, what doesn't work. Sometimes it's their frustration that the corporate setup sometimes becomes an obstacle, becomes like a handbrake. So they go to do their things, but they draw on their own experience. So it can help you, right? Your personal things can help you. So not everyone, right, and not every role. There's a point where I was being offered and I was being interviewed by a company for a role as marketing director. And I met with them, went through most of the process, and then I met with the MD. And I said, okay, I will be a good marketing director, but I will never be an excellent marketing director, so I will turn it down. And he was shocked, right? Because it's not something people normally. I said, why? I said, look, for you to do marketing director, I said, you know, the consumer insights, the data analysis, what should be executed, this and that, I can do that. That's very good. But I said there's a sense of wacky creativity that you need to bring something out of the blue. And I said, I don't have that. And if I'm leading the function, and sometimes because of my data focus or background, I can kill certain creative ideas. Because I say, no, I can't see how it adds up to Naira and Kobo, right? So I would rather be a counterpart to somebody who has that, and then we can challenge and find a middle. So I said, you know what, I'm not interested. And so they said, okay, our sales director is an expatriate. His contract will be done at the end of the year, in a year's time. And I said, in a year's time, call me. And they did in a year's time. And then I became the sales director for that organization. So you also have to know yourself.
Yeah.
You have to know there's certain things that I can live with and there's certain things I cannot. You need to know the organization. Will the culture allow me thrive? There's certain, I did a role, you won't find it in most of my CV. It was just for 5 months. Before I took the role, I knew I was going to struggle, but I just said, you know what, it shouldn't be that you had this opportunity and you didn't take it. But the moment I got in, I saw it wasn't, and I didn't waste time. 5 months, I woke up one day, I said, you know what, this is not for me. But there are people who are saying, why don't you just stay for the money, you know, stay, collect the money and extend. But I said, not for me. So you have to know yourself. You have to know yourself, know what you're comfortable with. I've promoted somebody once before and she declined the promotion.
Wow.
Yes, and she simply said, look, Alex, I love to write. I also do a good job because I know my job pays my bills and it offers me things, but the time also allows me the time to write. If you promote me, I will not be able to write and therefore I will have a miserable life, so I am okay. And this is a young person.
Wow.
So there are not too many people you find who are very clear, this is why I am doing this. I've also seen people who are artists. They were doing sales job. I know a friend who is now almost a renowned artist, but he was doing it on the side. But at some point, after being an area manager and co, he decided maybe it's time to face this full time. So sometimes you may need time to build a financial foundation or something that gives you the latitude to do what you're doing where it can generate the kind of funds. You're doing artwork at the beginning, people might not buy, people might not know who you are, but when you've established that, it's very easy to say, okay, now I can take the risk because I have sorted some of that. These are different options I've seen people do that probably help in managing and dealing with that.
Mr. Alex has been very mind-opening, eye-opening, all you've been saying. So my next question, I think you've answered it a little bit, but let's just go into it. When do you identify, as a corporate person, as a 9-to-5 person, when do you identify that it's time to leave a company? it's time to leave a particular role for better opportunities? How do you know? How does it strike you?
So if I use my own view, if it starts to become boring for me, all right, because you get in, I think I've been fortunate in the sense that I started with most of the companies where I spent a long time in there, are companies where I came in when the companies were coming in. So you're creating new stuff is exciting. Like I said, there was a period where I was moving literally every 18 months into a new role. So it's excitement, is something new. But after a while, you build and then you see that I'm doing something, yes, bigger, but it's the same thing. So it's becoming boring for me. And so I choose, at that point, I choose to leave, okay? The challenge is not. So I've had different experiences. At the point, I then said, you know what? This is what my own proposal, and I say my own so that it's not whether it's ideal or not. I say probably maybe aim to spend somewhere not less than 3 years.
Yeah.
Because you need to show that you have delivered something. So first year, you're learning something. Second year, you're consolidating. Third year, if you're doing a good job, typically you should get promoted. And when that happens, okay, it's like a new lease again, you're trying to learn. So sometimes you get that, and therefore it keeps you going. So some people can stay in one organization because they're getting new opportunities or roles, therefore they're expanding, they're growing, they're getting their growth. And then sometimes it could be that people come to look for you because, oh, we think you can do a job. And it's up to you to then decide whether or not the organization is right for you. Will the culture, the values. So sometimes you can make the mistake of leaving too early because you've not consolidated, especially on the role or the experience that you've gotten. Some people are first-line managers, so they've barely done the role. Somebody comes and throws a lot of money, and you're going into a new organization. You have not even established that, and you're now fighting different things. You're first of all trying to establish on your role as a first-line manager, and then in a new organization where people are wondering, they could have promoted people from inside. Why did they bring this person? What does he have to offer? It could be a challenge. So I usually say 3 to 5. It allows you to see that. Now, there's an organization where I stayed 9 years. Again, it was more from the perspective that there are people who came because they felt, oh, if Alex is here, Alex is the person leading here, okay, and he's trying to drive change. So I want to work with him. So I was also feeling a bit responsible. If I have brought in people and I'm leaving, am I leaving them to this day? And sometimes, even when I think back, I said, maybe I could have left earlier. But also I felt that, was it the right thing to support some of the people who have joined because of you? Because it gets to a point where people actually leave or join an organization because of you. And you've got to be conscious of that. So my rule of thumb is 3 to 5 years, but I've seen people spend 30 years in an organization and their careers are moving. And they're getting different challenges, changes, things. You've got to, every organization should add 2 things to you. One is financial reward, because they're rewarding you for what you do. The second is to build your IP, your intellectual property, which means the roles, the exposure you're getting is making you such that when you leave work and you don't have to work, can you now sell your IP to other people? If your organization is doing that, then why not stay? If your organization is not doing that and all you're doing is collecting money, when you leave after 20 years or 30 years, the money will fizzle down. It's your IP that will take you beyond the money that you have. Yes.
Yeah, okay. You talked about promotion just now. So I want you to tell our listeners, our viewers, how they can handle setbacks in case they are passed on for a promotion. How do you handle being passed on? Should that be a reason to leave? Like you just talked about leaving, spending 3 to 5 years. Someone has been on a particular role for 5 years and they keep getting passed on promotion. Should that be a reason to leave an organization? How do they handle such setbacks, especially if they've not gotten everything they need to get from that organization?
I think the first thing is to find out why, because there might be something you're doing or you're not getting right that probably you need help. So, and I have passed people I've refused to promote people for certain roles because I felt they were not ready. And because I also understood that the next level requires a different set of skills. So some people think, and I use sales as a simple example because that's where I've spent a lot of my career. Some people think because I'm the best salesman, it therefore means I'm ready to become an area manager. No, an area manager means that I have to lead other people to produce results. I could be a strong salesman because of my personality, but I also need to learn what it takes to work with other people. I also need to understand that I might now be inheriting other territories where the performance might not be all the same. So how do I act? How quickly do I get to a situation where I can handle that? And sometimes we don't ask. We just feel I am ready and therefore we're past. Sometimes it could be the fact that the company has to make two choices. It's not because you're bad. We have one role, and I've seen examples of senior leadership succession for a number of big global companies. Typically, if we take a firm like GE in the past, if they're doing succession, there are 3 candidates for the group of CEO. And they've been identified, they've been in the open, everybody knows. The day they're going to make a call, they're going to make a call on one person. But the moment they're making that call, 2 other organizations are appointing the other 2. So it's not that you're bad, it's just the fact that, okay, the opportunity might not be there. So long as the organization is open and transparent and shares that, fine. You should bid your time because sometimes the opportunity will come. So that's why I said don't get carried away by, but they promoted this person ahead of me, or they promoted this. I've had the reverse where at some point in future, so I was a trade marketing person having a dotted line reporting to a marketing manager who was expatriate and the head of sales who was also expatriate. Fast forward 20 years later, I was now MD and the expatriate marketing manager is now reporting to me as marketing director. How do you act? What do you say? Right? It's about the role you have to do. If you personalize it, then you start to feel that this is not right. Some titles could be small and yet give you a breadth, and some titles could be big, they give you depth, right? Because I was managing a region here, or 2 regions for a company, and I had close to about 70 people. And I went to manage a country, and I had only about 25 people. The scope, one, I had P&L responsibility, so even though less people, smaller business than when I was managing regions, but there were different experiences that it gives. So the first thing is find out why and work on it. Sometimes if you don't work on those things, you might get the role elsewhere, but that thing will come back to bite you. So I've seen very clear examples, more than 2, 3, and in some of those instances, the companies have come to me to say, we're putting this guy in this role. I say, yes, I know he's smart, he's good at this, but this core thing that is critical for this role, he hasn't got it. And all the roles he's going to take will not give you those experiences. So it's been glossing over them. Now you're putting him in a position where that thing will come to them. And guess what? That role was supposed to prepare him to head the function, and then they made the conclusion, sorry, this guy can't. Now, it's gone somewhere else, sorry, this guy can't. Now, ultimately, that same issue that you haven't fixed will come back to bite you. So look inside and understand. If you find that it's truly because they're playing politics and you deserve to, then at some point you've got the right to make a call to say, you know what, let me go try somewhere else because I know that I have this thing to offer. But the first instinct for me is think of what you can do to fix yourself. And it might be a small 5% of the issue that you just need to get over before they say you are ready for this role. Now, if your value is being undermined, then you have the right to say, you know what, I work somewhere. And in reality, goldfish have no hiding place because some other people will be looking and some other people will come. This is where the question of exposure, if you solve problems, if you are in your your business groups or category groups or whatever, and people know, there are people who come after you. A lot of the roles that I did for other companies, I never applied. The last time I applied for a role was when I joined P&G. Every other role I did, somebody came to look for me because somebody told them, you need someone, we know somebody who can do the job. So just focus on building yourself. Make sure you are serving people and you have those opportunities. But if somebody is open, if your line is open to say, this is why you were not promoted, ask to find out why.
Okay.
And don't run away from those tasks. Sometimes there's some promotions that seem too good. They give you a title, they'll give you a role, but where you're going to build leadership muscle, they may not give you that. And you can bypass those roles. And in future, you now need the leadership muscle you're lacking. And at that stage, it is too late, right, for you to move. I've also had instances where I had to push someone who was at this level, but wanted to get into the commercial space. And I said, you have to go and start at entry level. And it took him 3-4 months before he agreed, right? I said, look, there's a reason why I'm doing that. You're a manager, and you can easily move in here and be managing. Tell people, go and do this, go and do this, go and do this. Okay, and you can get by, especially if the business is stable. But when you become functional head, sometimes you might have a business where things are not going, or you have to turn around. The question, you will have to go to the roots. And because you don't have that foundation, you're going to struggle. And he came back after 3 months. He said, I want to try. He was in R&D, right? Equivalent of a regional manager. And he went to site. And I said, if you have the leadership ability, I am sure you'll be able to overcome. In 1 year, we used to have this global dashboard where you compare the retail managers across 3 different countries. He was in the top 5. And immediately he was promoted to area manager in 1 year. Now, in between, when the regional manager is going on vacation, we'll hand over to him, because again, he had more maturity in how to handle things, so he was already acting, right? And guess what? Again, within that year, he was in the top 5 of the dashboard for regional across 3, area managers across 3 countries. And then he became a regional manager. Now, when the responsible, who was going to head the sales organization, today he's the head of that sales organization. If he didn't take that step backward, he will be passed on, and then he'll be surprised to say, people come in entry level, they grow, they get promoted to the same level. You're doing a good job at your region, but you know, when they're looking for that person, because his foundation is much more solid, they'll give you, and you're wondering, why are they bypassing me? Sometimes you might need, right, to go backwards. In Procter & Gamble, one of the early days, there was somebody who was vice president for finance. He was going to be made president for a region. And in P&G, if you don't have commercial experience, not good. They sent him to another region as an assistant brand manager for 18 months.
Wow.
And then he became president. If you tell some people to do that, they'll say it's a demotion.
Yeah.
Why? Because he needed to understand the fabric of a consumer business. Sometimes we need to be ready to do that, to understand why and what it does to help our careers.
Okay. Very insightful, sir. So one very good question I need you to, or something I need you to answer, is how do you advocate for yourself, for an institution or an organization that constantly undervalues your contributions, or maybe you're dealing with a very difficult boss, a toxic person who does not want your growth. You already know this, that it's happening, and you sort of still want to be in this organization. How do you advocate for yourself?
Sometimes you will have to leave if it's becoming too bad. If the system is bad, you're probably going to struggle to change it, right? Except you're in a position where you have the capacity to change it, right? You're the one that will end up being changed.
Oh.
Right? So you've got to understand that. How long can you fight? How much power do you have to fight? Or do you go somewhere else? Sometimes it might be I go somewhere else. you prove yourself, and then the same organization will come back to hire you.
Call you in.
This thing. One of the ironies, I always tell people, ironies of life. After NYC, the number of organizations I went to apply for. There was one where I went every day, drop application, try to see, I never got the chance. Guess what? 30 years later, I was now invited to be the MD of that organization.
Wow.
So life is not always a straight line graph. So, but it's a personal choice. That's why I'm careful. I'm saying my opinion in some of these things but I know there are certain principles that are universal. One of the key things is culture of the organization. No matter how fantastic a culture is, you're always going to find the odd person, right? That is an aberration. It's like cancer. So the way I describe it is, the culture is supposed to produce leaders of a particular type, but sometimes you have cancerous growth. Now, the right organizations have a way of finding out that we have cancer and killing it before it grows. Because if they don't, what happens is that cancer grows and destroys. Now, sometimes you may have some hiding somewhere where they cause no harm. They're benign. And that's why sometimes the organizations don't see and react. Because it's there, it is benign, it's not creating any. So it's only the small units and the people working in that unit that are feeling the impact. And when you're arguing, the rest of the organization cannot, no, our company is like this. So that's why you can find you're talking with people and they have different experiences of what the company is, and it's the same company, because the leaders now superimpose themselves on what should be. So you've got to be able to assess whether is this a systemic thing or is this an individual thing. And if it's an individual thing, do you have the courage to confront this? Now, one of the foundations of leadership is courage. And it's not as if you're born with it, but it's the fact that you are ready to deal with your fears. You don't run away from them, you don't shy away from them. You confront them, you shine a light to them, and you address them. That's the way you overcome. And courage is like a muscle that needs to be built. So if you can't confront a line manager who is being disrespectful, and confronting doesn't mean doing it in a negative manner, in a firm, assertive manner, then you're going to struggle, all right? Again, it always, why it goes back to, I say, build yourself. If you have value, there's an opportunity in the marketplace for you. So your legs are not tied to one organization.
Exactly. Your legs are not tied to one organization. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll continue this gist. It's actually very interesting. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. I'll be right back.
The After 5 Diaries. The After 5 Diaries.
All right, welcome back, you guys. This is still the After 5 Diaries pod, and I've been chatting with Mr. Alex. And Mr. Alex has just been opening our eyes, telling us so many things that we didn't know existed. All right, so with your wealth of knowledge, I want you to just give us a bit of unconventional things that we need to know as 9-to-5ers and as corporate people. What are those things that we need to do to spice up this climb of the corporate ladder?
So I won't call them unconventional, because I think they're, so I might be sounding like a broken record, because I think there are lots of things that people know, but a lot of people don't maybe put a lot of focus on them. I think the first thing is to understand that there's a quote from Albert Einstein that I like. It's better to be a man of value than to be a man of success.
Okay.
And because success sometimes is defined by the way it's external, the way the society looks at it. Is it wealth? Is it your position? Is it title? Or is it value? I'm offering something. Money is a means of exchange of value. The more value you create, the more money you get. So, and which is why in the organization where you are, those who earn the more money are seen as those who create more value. It's not about the time you spend. Is about the value. So I think we've got to stop treating 9 to 5 as a place where we go from 9 to 5. It's when I go 9 to 5, what value am I creating for the organization? And if you focus on where real value is, you have an opportunity to grow. For you to do that, you've got to have the right knowledge. So I think read wide, read open, get a lot of things. But knowledge on its own means nothing. Knowledge only becomes skill when you put it into practice. So look for roles that will allow you practice your knowledge, and that will allow you therefore be able to then create the value that starts to reward you. And when you're seeking knowledge, we've got to be careful. There's a lot of focus on certifications. Yes, by certain laws, certain regulatory things, certain things are required. But people focus more on certifications or the fact that am I solving a problem, right? If you have a PhD in nutrition and dietetics and your food is too salty, your restaurant will not sell.
Exactly.
So the person who has a PhD in nutrition and dietetics will probably do better than somebody who doesn't, if you know how to cook well and then you add other things to it, because then that's why you charge an arm and a leg. Right? Rice is still rice, but rice in Mama Risi is 500 naira, in Chicken Republic 2,500, in Chinese restaurant 20,000 naira. So it's up to you to do that. So I think spend time looking at that, because whether in 9 to 5 or outside, it's value that gets rewarded. So how do you create value? So how do you build a foundation for that? Is have the right knowledge, look for opportunities to translate that into skill, right? And then make sure that, okay, you're always delivering. Build the right kind of relationships with people, right? You've got to be able to work effectively with a lot of different people, because problem solving is about solution for people. If in this new world, everybody, I'm my kind of person, I can't stay by myself. No. Because you have to collaborate. Even this podcast, you need different people to collaborate to get it to work. If you can't work with people, you're going to struggle. Oh, artisans are like this. You are still going to need an artisan.
Exactly.
So the question is, how do you manage an artisan to get the best? So learn how to work with people, focus on problem solving. AI is coming. And people are shouting AI. AI is like a tool. We've always had technology, right? To the guys who used to use a talking drum to pass message from one village to the other, it was AI at the time it came.
Wow, interesting.
And then it became something else, and then it became something else, and then today it is something else. So technology is just, the more we have more knowledge available, the people who know how to use it are the ones who will get the most value. It's not the people who can do it, it's know how to use it and know how to create value. So I think if you focus on those, then you will see that. And then the last thing is, don't beat yourself up. Life is about continuous improvement, right? You're going to make some mistakes, you're going to fail. If you see anybody who told you that every single thing that he's done has been successful all the time, he's never pushed himself beyond his limit, right? We all have different abilities, different capacities, different things that we're capable of doing. Some of us are only using a fraction of what we're built to have because we're scared to be too good, right? Don't allow I better pass my neighbor mindset to dump you.
Yeah.
If you do that, I'm sure you'll find a fantastic time in your career.
Mr. Alex, has been real, it's been liberating, and I'm sure that everybody listening have found ways to define or redefine their own climb. Thank you guys, thank you so much for being here. I don't know if you have any final thoughts for people maybe stuck in a place that they need to leave. Just final thoughts, final words before we call it a wrap.
If you're stuck in a place that you need to leave because it's not good for you, first of all, ask yourself, why are you afraid of leaving? And sometimes it might be financial. Right, so find a way, how am I going to deal with that? How am I going to live with this? If you have a partner, how are you going to navigate through the tough times? And that, there was something I learned from my son when he told me the story, and I have not fact-checked to see whether it's right or wrong, but he did the same experiment. I found out of all my 3 children, if you give them the same amount of money, and you come back 3 months later, he has huge amounts in his savings. The others have spent years and sometimes. And he said, you see Elon Musk, that he read somewhere that before he started taking huge bets and risks with his businesses, one of the things he did was to find out whether he could live on $1 a day. And he did that over a month. And then he said, so if the worst comes to the worst, I know that I will be able to feed and I will not die because it's proven that I could. And so my son said he did it. I said in school, he lived on £1 a day and he proved that he could. So if for him, any other thing is not necessary. Sometimes you might get to that point to say, this is what I need to do for me to break out. You might be surprised the opportunities that sit outside because you're very narrow focused. But at the end of the day, what I always say is life is about choices. We will live with the consequences of the choices we make or we allow others make on our behalf. And consequences can be positive or negative. Nobody owes you that. You owe yourself that.
Thank you, Mr. Alex Goma.
Thank you very
for
much,
finding time to come and sit with me to chat in the pod. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
All right, folks, this has been real and it's been the After 5 Diaries. And till next time on the show, I'll come with something else mind-blowing, something else relatable, and something that you enjoy. So till then, I want you to keep climbing in your career, but only if it's worth the view. Catch you next time. I love you guys. Bye.
After 5.